For 20 years, I scrubbed floors, polished chandeliers, and served a family who believed they owned everything, but what they didn't know is that I was the real owner all along. I hid a secret that could destroy everyone in this mansion, but tonight, it almost cost me my life. Who was trying to stop me? And why did the letter I found in the library change everything? No one would believe what I was about to do next. Before we go to the full story, please tell me from where you are watching. Tell me in comments, like the video and subscribe for more videos. The mansion loomed above me every morning as I carried the heavy bucket of soapy water down its marble floors. 20 years I had walked these halls, unnoticed, cleaning after the people who thought they owned everything. I smiled, bowed, and kept my voice low, though every fiber of me screamed with frustration. There were whispers about me among the staff, my peculiar attentiveness, the strange way I seemed to know where things were before they even asked, but I never gave a clue. My hands, now worn and scarred from decades of labor, had polished the chandeliers they admired so casually. I often caught myself staring into the mirrors, wondering what I had lost, who I had become. Every day, I listened to the laughter of guests I could never call friends, tasting the bitterness of invisibility. I carried secrets in every wrinkle of my face, every gray strand of hair I tried to hide. They thought they knew me, the quiet, dutiful maid, but they had no idea how powerful I truly was. And yet, something was different today. There was tension in the air I hadn't felt before, a sense that everything might unravel. I paused by the grand staircase, listening to the faint argument echoing through the dining hall. Who were they arguing about? And why did my name slip into their conversation without my understanding it? I remembered the day I first arrived here, young and eager, dreaming of stability. I had no clue that these walls held more than just wealth. They held betrayals, family secrets, and greed that could swallow a soul whole. Every corner I cleaned whispered memories I wasn't supposed to hear. A muffled cry behind the library door, footsteps in the middle of the night, hurried whispers in languages I didn't understand, all clues I filed away in the shadowy corners of my mind. I had learned to move silently, invisible, while the world above me clashed with its own selfish desires. Yet the more I observed, the more cracks I noticed, a misplaced envelope, a hidden drawer, subtle changes in the staff roster. I began to understand that this house was teetering on the brink of something far more dangerous than anyone realized. But who was orchestrating it? And why did every glance I caught suggest I was not only watching, but being watched in return? One afternoon, I overheard the heir arguing with a lawyer I barely recognized. The voice was sharp, demanding, dripping with greed, and every word sent chills down my spine. They spoke of debts, mysterious transfers, and a will that would leave everyone shocked. My pulse raced. I knew enough to feel the tremor of betrayal, but not enough to piece it together. I pretended to mop the hallway, pretending not to hear, but every syllable burned into my memory. Who could manipulate this family so recklessly? And why did the mention of my name draw a sudden pause, a subtle unease in the room that sent a ripple through my carefully constructed calm? As the weeks passed, I noticed things that didn't belong, expensive trinkets missing, subtle shifts in the layout of the rooms, papers hidden beneath furniture. Every day, I pretended ignorance while quietly cataloging these small anomalies. There was a strange rhythm to it, a pattern that only someone who had lived within these walls for decades could discern. I felt a gnawing sense of urgency, a growing awareness that something bigger than money, something that had been buried in these walls for years, was about to surface. And then came the note, a folded piece of paper tucked into my apron, and signed, warning me to stay away from the master's study. Who had sent it? And why did it feel like a threat wrapped in a whisper of recognition? The night I found the hidden ledger changed everything. It was a small, dusty book behind the portrait of the house's founder, filled with records that no one was supposed to see. My hands trembled as I flipped the pages, realizing that the fortune I had worked under for decades was, in fact, mine. Every dollar, every estate, every property in their names had been legally transferred to me in a confidential agreement no one had ever found. My blood ran cold. The family I had served, the people I had bowed to with polite smiles, were living in the shadow of my legacy without knowing it. How could I have kept this secret for so long, even from myself? And more importantly, who would stop at nothing to prevent me from claiming what was rightfully mine? The next morning, I returned to my duties with a different purpose. Every scrub of the sink, every polish of the silverware, became a study in observation. I noticed eyes following me with suspicion, whispers halting when I entered a room. I caught the youngest heir rifling through drawers, searching for something I didn't yet fully understand. Was he aware of the ledger? Was anyone else? I kept my composure, nodding politely while inwardly plotting a game they couldn't even imagine. I needed allies, or at least, pawns I could manipulate. The tension was electric, simmering under the surface like a storm ready to break, and I could feel the mansion itself holding its breath. Yet, someone was taking a dangerous interest in me, their presence hinted by fleeting shadows and hushed conversations. Who was watching me so intently, and what did they want? I began to plant subtle seeds of doubt. A mislaid document here, a whispered warning there. The family started questioning one another, tension rising with every passing hour. I saw friendships fracture, alliances crumble, and loyalty shift as quickly as candlelight flickers. My years as the unnoticed maid gave me insight into their weaknesses, and I used it with precision. But with every move, a creeping fear haunted me. Had they sensed my shift in demeanor? I caught the eldest daughter glaring at me one evening, suspicion brimming in her eyes. What had she discovered? And why did her gaze feel like a threat wrapped in familiar affection? The lawyer returned, demanding private meetings, hinting at revelations I could only guess. I observed from the shadows, carefully piecing together the motives behind every word and gesture. Something was being hidden, something that had the potential to destroy not just me, but the entire house. I realized I was in a dangerous dance with forces I couldn't yet fully control, and that one wrong step could expose me entirely. My mind raced through scenarios, plotting each contingency while feeling the tight knot of tension around my heart. Who was truly in control, and could I maintain my cover until the perfect moment revealed itself? The house felt alive, as if it were conspiring with me. Every squeak of the floorboards, every flicker of candlelight became a signal. I followed patterns, read behaviors, and uncovered small betrayals that no one else noticed. There was a strange exhilaration in my silent power, a thrill that mingled with fear. But then came the first open act of treachery, a staff member deliberately spilling secrets, testing my reaction. I had to act, and yet, I had to remain invisible. How much longer could I maintain this delicate balance between revelation and concealment? The confrontation came unexpectedly. The eldest daughter accused me openly, her voice slicing through the grand hall like a knife, of stealing secrets from the family vault. But I smiled calmly, revealing a truth that silenced her entirely: the vault belonged to me. Every accusation, every suspicious glance she cast had been directed at the rightful owner. Their shock and disbelief were palpable, echoing through the chandeliers I had polished for decades. For the first time, I felt the intoxicating power of truth in my hands, but it was laced with fear. Who among them would rise to challenge me next, and what lengths would they go to reclaim what they had always believed was theirs? In the days following, the house descended into chaos. Family members whispered behind closed doors, plotting strategies I could only partially glimpse. I walked among them with a quiet authority, every step deliberate, every word measured. And yet, I felt the sting of loneliness. For 20 years, I had been invisible. Now, power could not fill the void of trust one had never allowed anyone to enter. I began to wonder whether revenge, even when justified, came at too high a cost. Would they ever see me as a human being, or would I forever be a specter haunting my own empire? Late one evening, I discovered letters hidden behind the kitchen tiles, letters written to me before I was even born, hinting at betrayal spanning generations. The realization struck like lightning: my presence in this house had never been mere coincidence. I was meant to inherit, to reveal, to conquer, but only after enduring years of unseen suffering. Each letter held a key to understanding who had plotted against me, who had tried to erase me before I even existed. But what was the ultimate secret these letters concealed? And why had no one dared mention them aloud for decades? A storm raged outside as I pieced together the fragments of truth. Rain lashed the windows, wind rattled the shutters, and the mansion seemed to shiver with anticipation. I realized that every small act of obedience I had performed, every bow, every quiet smile, had been a rehearsal for this very moment. I could feel the threads of destiny tightening around me. Yet, even as the puzzle came together, I sensed another force at play, someone manipulating events from a distance. Who was this unseen player, and how far would they go to claim power for themselves? I began to test them, planting evidence, watching reactions, observing alliances form and break. The younger heirs turned on each other with terrifying speed, their greed blinding them. I watched silently as their empire crumbled from within, built on assumptions, lies, and unearned entitlement. And then, a letter arrived addressed to me, unsigned, warning me of betrayal from someone I had never suspected. My pulse raced, because it meant the game was far more dangerous than I imagined. Who had sent the note, and what did they truly want from me? The next morning, I revealed myself fully to the staff. I was the true owner. Every gasp, every dropped feather duster, every wide-eyed stare made the decades of silence feel heavy and triumphant all at once. But the shock wasn't the end. From the shadows stepped the eldest heir, smirking, revealing that they had known all along, and had been scheming to trap me in a legal labyrinth if I ever revealed the truth. My carefully constructed world teetered on the edge of destruction. How could I respond to someone who had anticipated my every move and sought to outmaneuver me before the battle had even begun? I refused to be intimidated. The house, my inheritance, my labor, had made me strong in ways they could never understand. I began to quietly gather allies among the staff, those who had been loyal to me without knowing why. Together, we formed a silent force within the mansion, a counterweight to the heir's schemes. Every smile, every whispered agreement, was a move on the board, an unseen strike in a war they didn't even realize had started. But I knew the greatest danger was not the heirs, it was the secrets still hidden, waiting to unravel my plans. Who among them held the final, devastating card? I discovered hidden accounts, safe deposits, and letters buried in forgotten drawers. Each revelation strengthened my claim and exposed the heir's ignorance. But it also revealed a horrifying truth. One of the staff I had trusted for decades had been feeding information to them, guiding their suspicion. The betrayal cut deeper than any deceit from the heirs. How could someone who shared years of loyalty turn so completely against me? And more importantly, could I reclaim control before the damage became irreversible? I staged subtle confrontations, testing reactions, observing alliances fracture. Fear and greed twisted faces I had known for decades. Every glance became a battlefield. I realized that victory wouldn't come from confrontation but from precision, timing, and the revelation of secrets no one saw coming. And yet, even as I plotted, a shadow moved silently in the corridors, a reminder that I was never truly alone. Who was stalking me in the dark, and what did they want from the woman who had waited 20 years for this moment? Late nights became my laboratory for strategy. Candles flickered over maps, letters, and ledgers. I rehearsed conversations, imagined betrayals, and prepared for every contingency. The house seemed to pulse in rhythm with my heartbeat, every creak a warning, every whisper a clue. I felt a growing exhilaration, but also a gnawing tension. Someone was planning something monumental, something that could destroy me entirely if I miscalculated. But who would be bold enough to challenge me when I controlled the truth? The family discovered the hidden ledger and confronted me with what they believed was undeniable proof that I had been lying. But I calmly presented another layer, a notarized deed proving that everything, including their claims, belonged to me. Their disbelief turned to panic. But before I could savor it, the lawyer revealed an even darker secret. someone in my own bloodline had tried to erase me legally before I even claimed my inheritance. Shock twisted my vision. How deep did this betrayal go, and which family member had orchestrated such a long-concealed plan against me? I realized that the mansion was more than a home. It was a labyrinth of power, greed, and lies stretching back generations. Each secret I uncovered made me stronger but also more vulnerable. I understood that to maintain control, I needed to strike decisively, exposing betrayals before they could be weaponized against me. Every step was calculated, every word intentional. And yet, I could feel a trap forming just out of reach, the final act of deception waiting to plunge me into chaos. Who was the last hand in this dangerous game? I began confronting each heir privately, revealing truths in pieces, watching their reactions, studying the fear and envy etched into their faces. Some cried, some pleaded, others schemed further, unaware that their plans were already being dismantled. The mansion itself seemed to sigh with approval, walls echoing with decades of hidden truths finally surfacing. But in the midst of the chaos, I felt an unshakable presence watching, waiting for the exact moment to strike. Who could possess the patience to watch 20 years of scheming unfold, only to intervene at the most critical second? The eldest daughter, desperate, attempted to reclaim authority by locking me in a room with no apparent exit. I smiled behind my composure, knowing the mansion better than anyone. Using a hidden passage, I escaped unnoticed, turning the trap back on her. Her shock was delicious, but fleeting, because I realized that she had an accomplice, someone whose cunning rivaled even my own. Who could she trust, and who among the staff would finally betray her in this twisted game? I called a meeting in the grand hall, the chandeliers sparkling over the room filled with trembling heirs and loyal staff. I revealed every secret, every betrayal, every misstep I had witnessed, weaving a narrative so precise that no one could argue. Faces turned pale, alliances shattered visibly before my eyes. The weight of 2 decades of silence finally lifted from my shoulders, replaced by a sharp, intoxicating clarity. And then came a faint sound behind the curtains, a reminder that not all secrets had been unearthed, that the mansion still held one final twist. Who remained hidden, and what would they reveal? The curtains fell, and a figure emerged, unmistakable and terrifying in their familiarity, my own sibling, thought long dead, holding papers that could reverse everything. They had been orchestrating this from the shadows, intending to reclaim what they believed was theirs. Every betrayal, every secret, every plan I had meticulously built was now in jeopardy. But I, the maid for 20 years, the unnoticed shadow, now the rightful owner, had anticipated this. With a single signature, I revealed a final clause in the will: everything belonged to me, irrevocably, and every act of deceit had been documented. Shock, fear, awe, these swept across the room in waves. As they stumbled, defeated and powerless, I stood tall, victorious yet scarred by the betrayal, realizing that even love, trust, and family could be weaponized. The mansion fell silent, its secrets finally resting, but I knew that some truths are never fully buried.